Last night's 40-minute rescue came to an end here, just off Fishing Point at Lake Macquarie. Police say a 58-year-old Sydney woman fell off a 28-foot cruiser just before midnight.
The skipper has turned the vessel to avoid the southerly change, and unfortunately the lady went into the water.
Fishing Point Road residents reported the woman's frantic calls for help after the boat's skipper was unable to find her.
Police arrived, commandeered a vessel, went out onto the lake, but fortunately for us and for the lady, an unknown male who was in a small dinghy has apparently located the female. The police arrived shortly afterwards, pulled the woman out of the water.
She was taken to Belmont Hospital where she was treated for hypothermia and shock and was discharged this morning. The incident has prompted police to issue a warning to all mariners about boat safety this summer.
You need to be mindful of how quickly the weather can change. We're in a storm season, southerly change can come up, which has occurred as it did last night, and it could have been very tragic.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. It's the most destructive and dangerous vandalism attack yet. Safety lights and a boom gate at a rail crossing off Richmond Vale Road was smashed with a four-wheel drive.
It looks like that the vehicle has been rammed into the uprights and have actually twisted the boom gates around so that they're facing across the track instead of across the road. The extent of the damages could be $30,000.
Safety signs were also trashed. The Richmond Vale Railway Museum uses the line to run special tours aboard its historic locomotives, but lately the rides have been more dangerous than pleasurable.
We've had stones put on the track, we've had stones thrown at the trains.
At the museum, there's more of the same. Trains covered in graffiti, their windows smashed so often many have been boarded up, and that's not all.
Cars have been dumped at the front gate and torched. A lot of members' private tools have been stolen, valuing over about $3,000 worth.
Museum volunteers are devastated by the ongoing attacks.
How do you understand stupidity, really? I mean, there's no logic involved in what they're doing. That's just crazy.
Over the past 18 months, vandals have cost the not-for-profit organisation $80,000.
If the vandalism increases to the level where it's starting to really affect our running, then we might have to seriously look at how we actually operate and curtail our operations.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The Sabre jet is to Raymond Terrace what the Big Banana is to Coffs Harbour, and a popular lunch stop for weary travellers. The last time the plane received any TLC was in 1993, and after 15 years of battling the elements, the jet looks a little worse for wear. Council is now faced with two options: to hand it over to the Historical Restoration Society, which has offered to take it free of charge, or to have it restored and retained at Bettles Park, where it's been since 1981. Port Stephens councillor Glenys Francis hopes her fellow councillors will consider the jet's significance when it votes on the issue in February.
Basically, it needs money spent to restore it, to repair it, painting and a little bit of TLC.
The Lions Club funded its relocation from the RAF base and has already started a fundraising campaign to keep the jet in Raymond Terrace.
It's part of the community. All the travellers, it used to be the main highway through Raymond Terrace, and a lot of the travellers used to say, "Oh, we'll meet you at the Sabre."
Another person who is keen to see the jet stay is Michael Johnson, who stopped by today during a visit from Canberra.
We drive past, going to see rallies up north, and Dad'd say, "Oh, kids, there's the plane on the pole. Oh, yeah, fantastic," and pull over and stop and have a look.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News. Business is booming in the Bay. Thousands of tourists are battling for a seat in a cafe, a spot at the beach and a space for their cars. Accommodation is booked out this week and rooms are filling up quickly for the rest of January, especially self-contained units. But Neville Juice from Port Stephens Tourism says things weren't looking so rosy a few weeks ago.
I think there was a lot of uncertainty this year with the financial crisis, changing fuel prices, people not being sure of when their holidays may be, so there's a lot of last-minute inquiry.
It's believed the last-minute rush is from visitors who have chosen to travel closer to home instead of giving up their annual holiday altogether.
More people are travelling from Sydney or within the short 2 or 3 hour distance from Port Stephens area, and quite pleased with the way things are going.
The number of international visitors is also strong, up by around 10%, with most coming from Singapore and Malaysia, and tour bookings are also up by around 20%.
The indicator is that a lot of people are coming up for day trips and not necessarily staying overnight.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
The Jets admit they're playing for pride, but you wouldn't have guessed it at training this morning, with a no-holds-barred approach leaving plenty of walking wounded. The coach and new captain couldn't be happier with the attitude.
I made a statement after the training session that that's exactly what we'll need against New Zealand this weekend.
Good to see, the young boys are really, getting stuck in today. As you can see by the lump on my ankle, so, it's all good as long as it's done in the right manner.
Joel Griffiths returns to the site of his infamous brain snap this weekend and admits his New Year's resolution is to lead by example.
No red cards for this 2009 and no speaking back to the referee.
A host of injuries means 2 more youth players have been added to the squad. The coach believes 18-year-old Brodie Moy has a future in the game if he finds consistency on the pitch, after showing plenty in the classroom.
He's a pretty smart bloke, which, for someone who's got a nickname of Jed Clampett, you wouldn't think that actually would be. But, he just got 97 in his TR with doing his HSC.
Hal Van Egmond would have loved to have had these 2 available. Jade North and James Holland bid a fond farewell to teammates today, as both prepare to head overseas to further their careers. Meanwhile, the Jets will wear a unique jersey on Sunday promoting the Leukemia Foundation, because New Zealand law bans Newcastle from promoting its major sponsor.
I think, it's quite farcical, the situation, but we've set our piece. Now we want to take this opportunity to put a really, really nice New Year positive spin on it.
This was Nathan Outeridge in 2005, recovering from a car crash many thought would end his sailing career. But 12 months ago, almost to the day, the Wanji sailor and crew Ben Austin returned from Melbourne with a world championship few thought possible.
3 years ago, this time I was in hospital. It's a massive achievement.
And so was this. Supercross champion Chad Reed won a second world title in Las Vegas before returning for an Aussie series named in his honour. The kid from Curry won that too. It's the same town that claims Casey Stoner. He finished the MotoGP season in second, but especially sweet was the Phillip Island win, his home Grand Prix. In the same month, a very humble Hunter Hoop set new standards on the racetrack.
I've had wonderful support from all owners and trainers for a lot of years, and I'd like to thank all of those very much. Just hope I keep fit and well, and I'm still enjoying me riding and the races, so we're just full steam ahead.
That certainly was the case for County Tyrone in this year's Gold Cup, ending a decade-long career.
I knew he'd run a great race. I thought he ran 4th, actually stuck his head out and ran 3rd. Gutsy effort, but that's been his whole career. He's just a real trier.
With one runner retired, Lees had another to keep him busy through the spring in Boom filly Samantha Miss. It took out the Princess Series and $1 Million Oaks. Paul Perry and his mud-running grey Newport enjoyed much success as well, winning the Metropolitan at huge odds. Another bolter won the rich Newcastle Mile, Special Albert paying $53. Port Stephens shooter Michael Diamond finished second at the World Cup. At the beach, a world champion graced our shores as Stephanie Gilmore won Surfest's women's event. Overseas, Saltash water skier Karina Nowlan took out the American Pro Tour, while Charlestown golfer James Nitties will also be searching for success in the States after earning his US PGA Tour card.
I'm ecstatic, but I still got a lot of work in front of me.
A handful of North Stars are also off to America after they won a 4th title in the National Ice Hockey League. More travels on the cards for Luke Burgess as well, the Maitland-bred halfback making a successful debut for the Wallabies. There's no question we're a region of high achievers, juniors in particular, many of which are giving us plenty to look forward to in 2009, and here's just a handful. The 15-day road safety operation has yielded some shocking results. The number of motorists caught drink driving in the Hunter has jumped 50% in comparison to last year's figures.
It's really disheartening to see drink driving up so much.
Disheartening and dangerous, especially considering many of those caught were young and inexperienced drivers.
Quite a number of them were P-platers, but there were a number of high rangers in those P-platers as well.
Most drivers were caught in Newcastle.
There were some 30 people just detected in Newcastle alone for drink driving on New Year's Day, and that's a recipe for disaster.
But while drink driving offences were up, others fell. 1,700 people were detected speeding. That's down 141 on last year's figures, while 73 people were caught not wearing seatbelts, down 39. Trying to find a spare camping or caravan site at Swansea is just as hard as looking for a needle in a haystack.
We've got a couple of vacancies towards the end of the holidays, but these next couple of weeks we are sort of booked out.
Tough economic times are a factor in the holiday park's increasing popularity, but by no means is that the sole reason.
People are going back to genuine family values. They're having family holidays, not expensive over the top.
And across the bridge at Belmont, it's more of the same.
It looks like we're going to be full all through the January school holidays.
The vast majority of families holidaying along Lake Macquarie are from the Hunter and Sydney.
Not too far away from home, only within an hour and a half from home, and nice little spot to relax.
And it seems there's plenty of fun to be had when pitching a tent becomes a competition with your neighbour. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
She picked up a racket at the age of 4 and realised her passion for the game at 8. Now Nicole Hoynaski has begun the arduous climb towards the professional ranks. Born and raised in Sydney, Hoynaski is up before 5 a.m. to drive to Charlestown for training almost every day, and it's already paying off. Since coming under the guidance of coach Trudy Musgrave, the 14-year-old's game has blossomed. Recent tournaments in Korea, Brunei and Melbourne showcase Nicole's potential. Already as tall as her mentor, her size isn't her only advantage.
Nick's got a great future ahead of her. She trains really hard, one of the hardest workers I've ever seen.
Musgrave retired from playing last year to take up coaching, and after more than a decade as a professional, her contacts are coming in handy.
Met Leighton Hewitt before, and recently Casey Delacroix, Trudy introduced me to her, so it's pretty overwhelming to meet them, but it's really cool, and yeah, it's great to be around those sort of people who've been there before.
Hoynaski is hoping to feature in 3 high-profile tournaments in January in Victoria, including the Junior Australian Open.
I'm really hoping that I'll do well and hopefully be the best Australian yet.
The streets of Newcastle play the supporting role in the film Street Sweeper.
I set up this journey where he comes out of the sea at Nobby's Beach early in the morning, and then we follow him through the city, through the suburbs, and up kind of parallel to the Hunter River to Hexham.
And despite the fact it was rejected by the Dungog Film Festival, it's been shown at Perth's International Film Festival and Filmstock. And now it's taken out the prestigious title of Best Film at the Anchorage International Film Festival in Alaska.
The film's called Street Sweeper because it's about a street sweeper who crosses the city virtually unnoticed by the people who live in the city.
$20,000 and 3 days isn't the ideal amount of time and money to make a feature film, but it was all that was afforded the film's crew as the Australian film industry is continually squeezed out of view by their American counterparts. But they won't let it stop them. Between plans to tour the film up the East Coast and start Newcastle's very own International Film Festival, Neil hopes he'll find a spare 3 days to make another film and just perhaps win another one of these. It's not an Oscar, but rather an Usaka, or polished walrus penis, the trophy given to Best Film at the Anchorage Film Festival. Bridget Wild, NBN News.
He's dominated the domestic speedway scene for so long, and Lee Adams is showing no signs of slowing down. Racing in the opening round of the Australian Series in Newcastle, it followed a familiar script with Adams racing through the heats and final unbeaten. Cardiff's Jason Doyle was the best of the Hunter riders. Based in the UK for much of the year, he's among the next crop of talent coming through the ranks, and he finished 4th in the final last night. The series heads to Mildura for round 2 on Wednesday, but it'll be one man, Lee Adams, they'll all be looking both ways for yet again as he looks to make it 10 national titles. It was wind power that literally knocked the stuffing out of the opening day of the World A-Class Catamaran titles on Lake Macquarie. 2 races were scheduled for this afternoon, but with wind gusts reaching 50 kilometres an hour, organisers put everyone back on dry land for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, the entire fleet of the Pittwater to Coffs Harbour yacht race has reached their destination. Lake Macquarie's Frantic enjoyed a great race north, finishing 15th on line honours, 2nd in their division and 3rd on handicap. Most crews now remain for the offshore race series this week.
Every Monday, 130 meals are prepped and delivered to the elderly and disabled around Port Stephens by Meals on Wheels from this community care centre, but no one was cooking today.
We'll have to give frozen meals today rather than their normal fresh meal, and that's going to be an ongoing thing because we're not able to operate out of the kitchen.
The local bowling club has offered its kitchen for 5 hours a day this week, while others have promised equipment and supplies.
I'm not sure what we'll do if we have to make a long-term plan, because finding a commercial kitchen that we can produce the meals needed for our vulnerable population is what's going to be hard.
Council has secured temporary homes for the other community health and disability groups and services displaced by the destruction.
It's absolutely important and a vital building for the whole of Port Stephens.
The office upstairs behind me houses the local RSL sub-branch, and it's also where they keep precious war memorabilia and records. The group is yet to see inside the building to get an idea of what, if anything, has been damaged. Insurance assessors and engineers toured the site this morning as workers secured the building.
We're hopeful that most of the damage is superficial and that we'll be able to get the building functioning again fairly quickly.
Police are still speaking to 9 juveniles seen in the area at the time of the blast.
They took their own lives at risk, as well as affecting so many community care services that are essential to Port Stephens.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
Even when the breeze is down, spirits are high, and sailors have been living it up, both on the lake and off it.
We'd expect to be up about 15% this time of year, given the regattas that we've got.
National titles out of the Lake Macquarie and Toronto clubs wound up this afternoon, and while these sort of regattas aren't uncommon, a World Championship is, with the A-Class Cats starting today.
This year it's very, very busy out till Australia Day weekend.
In all, as many as 200 competition boats have been on the water, each with their own fleet of family and friends.
You can often find that there's 6, 7, 8 support people with that boat, so it does certainly fill up the local area.
There's $145 extra spending a day for international visitors and about $90 a day for domestic visitors. So that's money that goes back into our own town centres.
Then there's the regular tourist, many of who are spending their holidays closer to home given the weaker Aussie dollar and global economic uncertainty. However, people have had to be turned away with accommodation full.
I've been getting about 10 to 20 people a day that have been wanting over this period, but yeah, just being with the sailing, we've already sort of booked out completely.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
They paddle like seasoned pros. Hard to believe these are a couple of city boys, relative novices at sea kayaking. But there's inspiration behind all their effort.
It was my dad. He had prostate cancer, and so instead of sitting around doing nothing or worrying about it, decided to come up with something to do.
So began the Byron to Bondi paddle, some 740 gruelling kilometres, raising money for the Prostate Cancer Foundation. The pair set off on December 20, celebrating a very different Christmas and New Year.
It's a little bit crazy, and it's part of why I wanted to do it. We both have 9-to-5 jobs back in the city in Sydney, so it's a really good chance to go out and do something a little bit different, have a bit of adventure.
Scott's dad has joined the journey as part of the boys' land crew. He's one proud man.
Very impressed by him.
As well as raising $10,000 for the cause, the pair is raising awareness about prostate cancer.
It's all about the early detection, so anyone over 35 years old needs to go get checked out. I know it's not nice, no one likes to wake up and go, I'm going to get my prostate done today, but yeah, it's one of those things you just need to do.
It's good for them to talk about it and be aware of it at their age.
The kayakers will reach Bondi on Friday, both looking forward to putting up the paddles and relaxing at last this holiday season.
Another sorry scoreline for the Jets, who conceded late goals yet again to see them anchored at the bottom of the A-League table.
It's opening my eyes, especially in regards to who's looking like they want to be involved with the Asian Champions League.
And the coach has warned heads will roll by then.
We're going to bring in at least half a dozen people, and it'll be, places will be definitely up for competition. And unfortunately, there's going to be quite a number of unhappy players.
It's not like Newcastle didn't have their chances. Joe Wheelhouse and new captain Joel Griffiths both had shots stopped by Phoenix keeper Glenn Moss, while Tarek Elrich had two tipped away in less than 5 minutes as Moss kept Wellington in it before the break. The home side's opening goal was hardly convincing, but after it rolled in, the wheels fell off a Newcastle side which looks a far cry from the premiership-winning team of less than a year ago.
You don't take your chances, and it's been the story of our season, unfortunately.
There didn't appear to be any excess Christmas cheer carried by the Knights, and if there was, it was coming off pretty quickly today. Kurt Gidley was keen to join them on his return from that ill-fated World Cup, which saw him require knee surgery after the opening game.
It was pretty tough at the time and tough to watch the boys in that grand final of the World Cup, but that behind us now and looking forward to this year.
Enjoying an overseas break, he'll remain on restricted duties for at least the next 2 weeks though, as both his knee and general fitness levels are eased back.
It's not a structural thing that I've done to it, so it's just the cartilage sort of thing which you've got to make sure it's not a hindrance in the back end of my career.
Danny Wicks still doesn't have a full diagnosis of what hospitalised him last month.
It was frustrating. I wouldn't have minded some sort of medicine just to get rid of it off the spot, but I don't think it's contagious, and if it is, I probably wouldn't tell him.
Understandably, he felt the pinch on his return to training today, but the forward believes he still has enough time to reach full pace for both the trials and season kick-off. And at least there's been something good to come from that mystery illness.
If anything, it's I've dropped a few more kilos. I think I'm about 113 now, so no, it's not an easy way to lose weight, but it's not a bad way either.
Wes Nguama, meanwhile, remains in a knee brace as he faces another 12 weeks of recovery from surgery.
Clearly, a bird in the hand was worth two in the bush, as the finches resisted attempts to set them free. Lisa has been picking grasses from this scrub for the last few weeks to get the birds used to foraging for themselves.
And when they start picking at the food at the seed rather than begging from me, that's obviously they're getting older and they're getting ready.
6 finches were found huddled in their nest deep within a Christmas pine that had been cut down in the state's central west. Amazingly, all but one survived. They're not much bigger than last time we met, but their colouring has matured, living up to the name of red-browed finches, although they blend into the bush pretty well too. A colony of the finches already lives in this area, so hopefully they'll become part of the community.
This environment seems closer to what they would have had at Oberon.
The Native Animal Trust Fund hoping our community might come to their aid too.
I've had them flying in my bathroom because my cage wasn't quite suitable. So donations are always welcome.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
Ceilings buckled, walls bowed, windows blown out and the building open to the elements. The damage was caused on Saturday night after a wheelie bin was set alight next to a gas cylinder that subsequently exploded. For the first time, employees of the Aged and Disability Services, which operate out of the Raymond Terrace Community Centre, were allowed inside.
We've got a window of opportunity to get stuff out while we can, before they can actually start doing repairs to the place.
Meals on Wheels volunteers saved as much food as possible. Incredibly, their kitchen was almost untouched by the blast.
What a great relief that is. It looks really good. The fridges and freezers are still operational.
The same can't be said for the organisation's activities centre. Most of its furniture burnt. The upstairs offices of the RSL and MS Australia suffered the worst.
It looks like there's molten bin gone through with the blast and just started a small fire in one of the desks. But apart from that, we've been very lucky that there's no fire taken hold.
9 teenagers were questioned over the blast. Today, a 14-year-old was charged with destroying property by fire.
There's a number of youths that have already been spoken to. There are a number of further ones that we wish to speak to further about the matter, and we'll see how the week pans out.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. In 2007, Newcastle gained national media attention as a dangerous city overrun by drunken hoons. A public outcry saw a lockout introduced in August that year. Drug Arm says the restriction has made a difference over the past 12 months.
The city's starting to tame down. 2 years ago and in 2007, we called it an open city. It's closing down. It's getting more quieter.
According to statistics gathered by the group, in 2008 the number of people they helped for drug abuse dropped by 40%, while for alcohol abuse it fell 32%, and emergency or distress calls to the organisation fell 65%. But they say it's only in the last 3 months they've noticed our streets have really changed.
Up till last October we'd see mob fighting, singles fighting each other. We'd see some unusual behaviour between men and women in the streets or in the doorways. We're not seeing that now.
It's not all good news though. While they've seen less people using the drug ice in 2008, another appears to be taking its place.
Ecstasy is still the choice of drugs for most females, young females and young men.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It wasn't smoke from a bushfire, but fog which blanketed Newcastle's coastline and its surrounds. The eerie weather phenomenon hung around for most of the day, with visibility vastly reduced on roads and at the beach.
It is a mix of the warm, moist and humid air interacting with some cold air, and that's where you get the condensation, and it's forming right on the coast and around our beaches.
Down at Nobby's, the fog wasn't the only talking point for beachgoers after a shark sighting.
The surfers spotted the shark out off Big Ben and around the Spit area, well away from the swimming area. So we responded to that straight away by getting the jet ski out, and it's been out all morning for now about the last 3 hours.
Lifeguards are also urging swimmers and surfers to take extra care and check depths after a 37-year-old man was airlifted to hospital with a back injury following a skimboarding mishap at 1 Mile Beach this morning. And with the hot weather continuing and a rise in heat exhaustion and dehydration cases, the advice from paramedics, especially for the elderly, is keep cool and drink plenty of water.
Obviously, minimising exposure in the hottest part of the days, that 11 till 2. Staying out of the sun, the direct sunlight.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. Engineering, health, business, the list of study choices is huge. But help was at hand today with the University of Newcastle Advisory Day, assisting students in making one of the most important decisions of their lives.
Students now know their UAIs or their UAI equivalents, and sometimes it will be higher than what they're expecting, sometimes lower. Today gives them an opportunity to explore the range of degree programs that are available to them.
Find out which uni looks better and which courses look more interesting and suit me better.
Hundreds lined up to seek advice before the deadline closes for a change of preferences tomorrow night.
What I have to pick to get into it, what subjects I'm going to be doing, what UAI it's going to be. Yeah, a lot of questions.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Pulling alongside the Millennium, you get an idea of just how big it is. 3 football fields long, a skyscraper of the seas. This dining room came out of the Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic, but the old world charm gives way to modern necessities, including a gym with a view. Everything, including the pokies, runs on American dollars, but apparently cruising can meet any budget.
A room without a window, so they're very affordable, but all the way up to the penthouse suite, which is, it's a pretty penny for the penthouse suite, definitely.
The ship is booked out. Half of the 2,000 passengers are American, but there's also a fair smattering of Australians and New Zealanders. The Hunter playing perfect host for a few hours at least, with visitors queuing for tours of the vineyards, Port Stephens and Newcastle, injecting an estimated $500,000 into the local economy.
Great shopping, great restaurants, the beach is beautiful, it's a beautiful port of call.
Being a ship this size tells the cruise industry Newcastle can handle larger cruise ships,
And larger cruise ships obviously bring a larger number of passengers, which have a greater economic impact on the regional economy.
The Millennium may be about the same length as a coal ship, but as you can see, it's a whole lot nicer. Guests enjoy 5-star food, indoor and outdoor pools, an onboard spa and even a casino. And although today's visit may only be about the same time it takes to fill a coal ship, it's hoped the Millennium will be back again in the future.
We don't have plans to revisit in 2009, but we're working on 2010, and I believe that we will be coming to Newcastle again in the very near future.
Cruise Hunter already has 12 forward bookings for ships over the next few years. Penny Evans, NBN News.
It's television's Night of Nights.
Everyone's so happy and supportive, and it's one of those positive nights in television, so it's great.
But could the Logie soon be held in our own backyard? Newspaper reports say Queensland authorities are negotiating to have the Glamour event moved from Melbourne to the Sunshine State. And with the Convention Centre extension complete, we're a frontrunner.
I've just heard the rumours. Look, it'll be very exciting for the Gold Coast and for Queensland as well, if it was to happen.
The event has been staged at Crown Casino for more than a decade, but it could be time for a change. Now that there's a chance the Logies could move, it's expected the organisers will be inundated with offers and incentives from venues and governments around the country wanting to host the premier event. The Premier's office wouldn't confirm anything. The opposition was starstruck.
It would be fantastic to have the Logies here, and I think on balance, if it can be brought here in a cost-effective way, if we've got a meaningful chance, then certainly it's something that we should bid for.
So if it does happen, what are we going to wear?
It'll be the girls will be wearing the nice frocks, I'm sure.
They might make you wear a tuxedo.
They could. I have worn one before. I could pull one and dust one off, yeah, for sure.
And the Logie goes too. We'll just have to wait and see. Patrina Zaffa, NBN News.
There was no hiding from the heat at Jets training today. As temperatures soared, there was little respite, and a nearby sprinkler teased those on field. It's just the warm-up for coach Gary Van Egmond, who can expect the same in Dubai when he touches down early tomorrow ahead of the Asian Champions League draw. Just what players he'll be taking with him when that competition begins remains to be seen, as he looks for at least 6 new players to join by then.
Towards the end of January, there are some players who will come in this month who will trial and we'll have a look at to see if they're going to be the right type of players for us.
Club officials met in Sydney late today to discuss those. However, former Sydney and now Perth defender Nikolai Topor-Stanley is considered a certainty to join.
It's a case of just making sure that we get everything done properly, and my understanding is that has been done.
While he'll be back in time for Friday's match against Adelaide, players should still have his full-time spray from the weekend's game ringing in their ears.
It's also a case of trying to ensure that everyone's responsible for their actions.
It's already been a season to savour for Newcastle, but the real job lays ahead.
We've won nothing yet, and that will be the discussed at training this week. We've done well, but certainly far from complete.
Keeping the nerves in check could be the coach's biggest task this week with the do-or-die match at Energy Australia Stadium, a venue only a handful of the team have played on before.
Ideally, what we want to do is not put too much pressure on ourselves, but also try to lift the game one more level.
Katie Gill has done just that this season. The W League's second leading goal scorer has re-established herself as one of the country's finest strikers. And while retaining her starting spot in the Matildas is an underlying motivator, it's all about team for now.
It would be nice, obviously, to do something for Newcastle and give back to Newcastle. I mean, we've had great support, and I think, obviously, the men winning the A-League last year, it is an incentive for the women to do the same.
Regular captain Cheryl Salisbury will be included on the bench but will only be used if required as she nurses a now chronic calf injury. But young midfielder Sammy Wood is definitely out after being hospitalised after a recreational water accident.
Apparently she is out of danger, which is good news, but far from home yet.
A trip to the beach can be quickly ruined when you find that
nothing to do with my form.
Thieves are opportunists. There's even thieves travelling up from Sydney to target beachgoers and the beachgoers' valuables.
2 young thieves from Mount Druitt were apprehended down here at Nobby's Beach yesterday when a Canadian couple alerted police and chased down the pair after witnessing them steal a handbag. The keen-eyed tourists were guests on the Millennium Cruiser, which had spent the day docked in Newcastle. They even took photographs of the robbery as evidence for the police. But the message from authorities is simple.
Our advice to people is to really think carefully when you are coming to the beach. Do you really need to bring those valuables with you?
Bridget Wild, NBN News.
It's a case of here we go again for the Nobby's Lighthouse Consortium. For the past 8 years, they've worked to redevelop Newcastle's most famous landmark, but have had little success. They're now presenting the Commonwealth with a downsized version of their original plans, which were rejected last year. There's now 7 accommodation units rather than 8, and a 48-seat restaurant instead of a new 50-seat venue. The public observation deck has also been scrapped.
I think given the circumstances, it's a fantastic plan. Not as good as the first one, but a fantastic plan anyway.
Architect Barney Collins says the plan will have little impact on the site.
You will virtually see no difference to what the buildings are now. All you will see is that they're going to be fully maintained.
Even if the Commonwealth approves the project later this month, the group anticipates at least some objection from the public.
The people that always object will object, and will object on all the different grounds.
But objectors will have a fight on their hands.
One of the things that always happens is the naysayers always get their say, and I think Barney and I are both in agreement that we're not going to let them win.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It's a dream job for David Harasti, who's taken up a new research position with the Marine Park Authority at Port Stephens. While some of his work is spent above the waterline, much of the time he's below, studying sea life. The 33-year-old dives every day, discovering amazing underwater worlds, taking photos and tagging seahorses.
It's just one of the most unique animals in the world. It's the little male seahorse that actually gives birth. The female doesn't do that, it's the male that gives birth. And they're iconic. Everyone sees a seahorse underwater and they're like one of those little mythical beasts, and they're very fancy and very nice.
During his adventures, David discovered a rare anglerfish, which he believes is only found in Port Stephens. It'll be named after him. But his one true love is the seahorse, which is the subject of his PhD. He's tagged 200 of them, which live in the seagrass meadows, corals and sponges around Port Stephens.
Port Stephens is very rich in seahorses. We have a lot here of the one species of white seahorse, but we have actually 4 species that occur here.
And as his photos show, they're well camouflaged in their habitat, which he wants protected. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. It's the largest moving sand mass in the southern hemisphere and a great escape from the city or suburbs, especially for those with a four-wheel drive. And while it wasn't nearly as busy today, the 32-kilometre stretch between Berrubi and Stockton beaches became something of a four-wheel drive highway over the last few weeks, with beachgoers dodging vehicles.
It's been a very busy Christmas period. We've had upwards of 1,800 vehicles on the beach at any busy day.
6 infringement notices have been issued, but most drivers have been sensible, keeping to the 20 and 40 km/h speed limits.
We do a lot of joint operations with the police, and we're down here patrolling every day, so we tend to try and educate people to do the right thing.
National Parks and Wildlife Service staff also check whether motorists have beach vehicle permits, which can be purchased at nearby service stations.
The main thing is to be prepared. Know what to expect when to drive on the sand, let your tyre pressures down, drive to the conditions, stick to the speed limits.
Drivers should also stay well away from the numerous shell middens, which are important sites where Aboriginal people ate different kinds of shellfish, fish and other animals. Rangers also advise users to keep off the vegetation and take all rubbish with you to conserve the area for future generations. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
This stunning white filly, called Opera House, is almost as rare as the competition in which she is the first prize.
Andrew Johns and I have got 2 shares and 8 other drunks will have the 8 other shares.
To be one of the 8, you have to buy the Hunter beer backed by John Singleton. In return, you'll get a wristband with a unique code to be drawn at Wyong races in 6 weeks. If you are there and the number is called out, you'll receive 10% of all prize money collected by Opera House over her entire racing career.
Even if the horse doesn't win, I'm sure you're going to have a good time.
Newcastle's Chris Lees will train the filly. She was bought by Singleton at last year's Magic Millions, a $270,000 punt.
People thought a white horse, there's never been a white horse win a Group 1. So people here are a bit superstitious.
She's matured very well since she's come into the stable. Being by Zabeel, I think we'll see the best of her when she gets to 3. But she's a lovely, relaxed filly who's got a big future, I hope.
There's believed to be less than 100 white horses in the world. Opera House will race once the syndicate is sorted out after the Wyong meeting on the 22nd of next month.
Life's a lottery. Let's call her after a lottery. She's white like the Opera House. And it just seemed like a good idea at the time. Maybe it'll work out to be great.
If it does, the question then would be, who's shout? A final round of golf at his Fern Bay base before the biggest trip of this 26-year-old's life.
The word would be excitement first full tour card, it can't wait.
James Nitties can expect larger galleries on the US tour. But there's no bigger fan than his coach of 6.5 years.
I'm so proud of him because he's gone through a really hard time, with his sickness and everything like that, and he's really come through.
The defining moment came last month when he finished qualifying school in the top 25 to earn his spot on golf's richest and certainly toughest stage.
There's a long way to go, and I've got to work even harder because those guys will eat me for breakfast if I don't focus hard.
And that was the point of his trip home, to work on concentration without the full-time support of his coach, who'll remain at Fern Bay.
James knows his discipline. He's a great guy, and I think he knows what he wants and he'll achieve it. I think that's a big difference with James.
I'd like to get top 50 in the world. I mean, it's a big step, my first year on tour, but my back goals are just keep my card. Obviously if I go well at the start of the year, I'll reassess my goals.
And stay healthy too.
Yeah, try to.
James's first event starts in Hawaii Thursday week. Unlike at home, he'll have a full-time caddy on tour and regular tournaments to plan for, alongside Toronto pro Nathan Green.